Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into a topic that always seems to spark debate: intelligence differences, specifically between boys and girls in school.
hmm It's a well-trodden path, but often based on assumptions.
Exactly. And we're trying to cut through that. You shared a really solid piece of research, a big meta analysis.
That's right, from the Educational Psychology Review. It synthesizes, I think, 79 different studies,
Wow, 79. And that covered how many kids?
over 46,000 participants. And crucially, they all used the Wechsler scales, the WISC tests.
The WISC. Right. That's kind of the gold standard for kids' IQ tests, isn't it?
It's certainly one of the most widely used and respected, yeah.
Okay. So for you, the learner, listening in, if you want the evidence without the noise, this is for you. We want to pull out the key stuff, what it actually means, get some aha moments.
And hopefully clarify some common misconceptions along the way.
Definitely. And to help us do that, we've got our expert here to unpack it all.
Happy to dive in. It's a really robust analysis, which is great.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump straight to the core question then. This whole meta-analysis was looking for measurable gender differences in overall intelligence in school-aged kids using these WISC tests. What was the headline finding?
Well, the big picture for overall intelligence, they call full-scale IQ or FSIQ, is interesting. They did find a difference favoring males,
Okay.
and this is a big, but it was statistically significant, sure, but tiny in practical
How
terms.
tiny are we talking?
On average, about 1.4 IQ points.
1.4 points. I mean, given the scale, that sounds
But
pretty negligible.
exactly. It's really, really small. Unlikely to mean much in the real world.
But then it got even more interesting when they looked at the versions of the WISC test, right?
Absolutely. This is maybe one of the key findings. When they isolated the studies using the newer versions like WISC-3P and V,
Yeah.
that tiny 1.4-point difference, it basically shrank even further, down to maybe zero point 0.8 points,
Point 0.8, so almost gone.
pretty much. And in some of their analyses, it wasn't even statistically significant anymore at that point.
Wow. So the specific test matters a lot, it seems. What's going on there? Why would newer tests show less of a difference?
Well, it likely points towards the test construction itself.
Mhm.
Older tests might have unintentionally contained items that favored one gender slightly.
Huh.
Test developers nowadays are much more attuned to this. They do rigorous analysis during the design phase
Right.
to weed out items that show significant differential item functioning, basically. Items that are unfairly easier for one group than another, including gender groups.
So they're actively trying to make the tests fairer, and that might be reducing these small observed differences.
That's a very likely explanation, yes. Refining measurement tool gives a clearer picture.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, this study didn't just stop at overall IQ. They used the CHC model.
Yes, the Cattell-Horn-Carroll theory. It's a very influential framework.
Right, and that breaks intelligence down into different abilities.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of just one G factor, it looks at broader abilities.
Mhm.
Things like fluid reasoning, visual spatial skills, crystallized knowledge, working memory, processing speed.
Okay, let's tackle those. Fluid reasoning, GF. That's
Yeah.
like problem solving on the fly, ranking abstractly.
Precisely. It's your ability to reason with new information, see patterns, closely tied to that general intelligence factor we mentioned.
And what did the 46,000 kids show here, boys versus girls?
Again, fascinatingly minimal difference. Overall, a very, very slight male advantage was detected statistically.
What, tiny?
Extremely tiny. And just like the FSIQ, when they focused only on the newer WISC versions,
Let me guess, it vanished.
it became negligible. Statistically non-significant in many analyses.
So basically, for that core thinking on your feet ability, no real difference between boys and girls.
That's what this huge data set strongly suggests, yeah.
But wait, I remember seeing something about the specific tasks within fluid reasoning showing variation.
Yes. Digging deeper into the subtests does add nuance. An older subtest called picture arrangement showed a somewhat larger male advantage.
Okay.
But newer fluid tasks, like picture concepts, showed no difference. And interestingly, matrix reasoning.
That's like the pattern completion stuff, Raven's matrices type thing.
Exactly, a core fluid measure. That one actually showed a slight female advantage.
Huh. So it's not even consistent within fluid reasoning. Depends on the task.
It really highlights how multifaceted intelligence is, not one single thing.
Okay. What about the next one? Visual spatial ability, GV. This is where you often hear stereotypes about male advantages, like map reading or mental rotation.
That's the common perception. And the meta-analysis did find something there.
It did.
Yes, a small but pretty consistent male advantage, averaging around 3 IQ points difference.
3 points. Okay, still not huge, but more noticeable than the overall IQ difference. Did that hold up with newer tests, too?
It did, although the difference was slightly smaller in the newer WISC versions compared to the older ones, but it didn't disappear like the fluid reasoning difference.
Interesting. Were there specific subtests driving this?
Yeah, some older tasks like mazes and object assembly showed larger differences. Picture completion, less so.
Okay.
But block design's a key one here.
Ah, arranging the blocks to match a pattern. I remember that one.
Yes. It's used across many WISC versions, and it consistently showed one of the larger male advantages in this domain.
Why block design specifically, do you think?
It taps heavily into what's called visual constructive ability, building things from a visual plan, and also that mental manipulation, like rotating the blocks in your mind's eye. That seems to be where a small average male advantage lies.
Got it. Okay, moving on. Crystallized intelligence, GC. This is our stored knowledge, vocabulary, general info.
Exactly. Accumulated knowledge and verbal skills.
In here, boys versus girls.
Here, they also found a small, statistically significant male advantage, around 2 IQ points.
And was this consistent across test versions?
Yes, interestingly, this finding seemed pretty stable, holding up across both older and newer WISC versions.
Okay, a consistent small male edge in crystallized knowledge as measured by WISC. Any specific subtests?
The information subtest, basically general knowledge questions, showed the largest male advantage.
But isn't that less important in newer WISC scoring?
Correct. It's often a supplementary subtest now. Vocabulary and comprehension showed smaller male advantages.
Okay.
And similarities where you explain how two words are alike showed no significant difference.
So it's complex. It doesn't quite fit the simple girls are better at verbal idea, does it?
Not based on these specific WISC subtests, no. The nature of the tasks matters.
Right. Okay, next up, working memory, GSM. Holding and manipulating info in your head, like remembering a phone number backwards.
That's the one, mental juggling.
What did the data show?
Here we saw a shift, a very small and actually statistically insignificant female advantage overall.
Insignificant. Okay, so basically no difference, but if anything, slightly favoring girls.
That's the picture. And this pattern was consistent in the newer WISC versions too.
Any difference between the working memory tasks?
A slight one. Digispan, just repeating numbers back, showed a slight female advantage. But letter number sequencing, where you have to reorder letters and numbers, didn't show a significant difference. Maybe the extra manipulation leveled the playing field.
Interesting. Okay, now processing speed, GS. How quickly you can process simple information. This is often cited as a female strength.
And the meta-analysis strongly supports that idea. They found a significant female advantage here.
Significant. And how big?
Medium-sized, actually. It was more pronounced in older WISC versions,
Yeah.
but still definitely present and significant in the newer ones. We're talking around a 4 IQ point average difference favoring females.
4 points. Okay, that's noticeably larger than the other differences we've discussed, apart from maybe block design in the other direction.
Exactly. It seems to be a more robust finding.
Which processing speed tasks showed the biggest gap?
Coding, where you rapidly pair symbols with numbers using a key, showed a much larger female advantage than symbol search, which is more about visual scanning.
Why coding, do you think?
It could relate to factors like sustained attention, concentration on repetitive tasks, maybe even fine motor speed in writing the symbols down quickly. It's a consistent finding across many studies.
Makes sense. Okay, one more specific area they touched on, quantitative knowledge, GQ, based on the arithmetic subtest.
Right. Just one subtest here, so not a full CAC factor of this analysis.
And the finding.
A small but significant male advantage on the arithmetic subtest.
Okay, but with caveats.
Definitely. Arithmetic loads on multiple factors,
Yeah.
working memory, reasoning, not just pure quantitative skill.
Mm.
And again, it's not central to FSIQ calculation in the latest WISC. So grain of salt there.
Got it. So zooming back out, a really strong theme seems to be the impact of the WISC version itself. Newer tests generally show smaller differences.
Absolutely. That's a critical point. It strongly suggests that as test design improves and becomes more sensitive to potential biases, these observed gender differences tend to diminish, particularly for overall intelligence and fluid reasoning.
Which implies it's not just inherent differences, but also how we're measuring things.
Precisely. Measurement matters.
How do these WISC findings stack up against research using other IQ tests for kids, like the Woodcock-Johnson or the Kaufman tests?
Reassuringly, they align pretty well. Other major test batteries also tend to find that female advantage in processing speed,
Okay.
and they often show more mixed results elsewhere, sometimes with male advantages popping up in specific visual spatial areas, similar to what we saw here.
So there's cross-test consistency in the general pattern.
A fair degree of it, yes,
Hmm.
which strengthens the
Now,
conclusions.
no study is perfect. What limitations did the researchers themselves highlight in this meta-analysis?
They were quite upfront. One issue was simply the number of studies that actually reported data broken down by gender. It wasn't always huge for every single subtest or analysis.
Right.
Also, the WISC-CV is still pretty new globally, so there's less data accumulated for that specific version compared to, say, WISC 3 or 4.
Understandable.
They really emphasized the need for publishers to routinely report gender-specific data in their manuals. That would help future research enormously.
Good point. Anything else?
They looked at age as a potential moderator, but didn't find stable patterns. And they reiterated that point about test development.
Yeah.
The newer standardizations deliberately remove items showing non-invariance.
Items that work differently for boys and girls.
Exactly. Which, by design, will tend to reduce estimates of gender differences compared to older tests that might not have undergone such rigorous screening.
So the tests are evolving away from showing these differences in a way.
You could see it like that, yes. An evolution towards fairer measurement.
The study also mentioned a specific model, the GVPR model. How do the findings fit with that?
Ah, yes. The GVPR model stands for General Intelligence, G, Verbal, Perceptual, Spatial, and Rotation. It basically proposes that significant cognitive differences between groups are more likely at the level of specific abilities, not the general G factor.
Okay.
So it predicts potential male advantages in spatial rotation tasks and female advantages in speeded perceptual tasks, but smaller differences in G or maybe broad verbal ability.
And does this meta-analysis support that?
It seems to, quite nicely. We saw very small, often negligible differences in FSIQ and fluid reasoning, both close to G.
Right.
But we did see that consistent, albeit small, male advantage in visual spatial tasks, especially block design, involving rotation construction, and that clear female advantage in processing speed.
So the differences pop up more in the specific skills, less so in the overall G.
That's what this data suggests, aligning well with the GVPR idea.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this for the learner. After going through all this, what's the main takeaway message?
I think the biggest thing is the lack, really, of any meaningful difference in overall in FSIQ between school-aged boys and girls, especially using modern tools.
The 1.4 points shrinking to less than 1 point.
Exactly. It's just not a significant real-world difference. While some specific abilities show average differences, the visual spatial slightly favoring males, processing speed more clearly favoring females, it doesn't add up to a substantial gap in overall intellectual horsepower.
What was the biggest aha moment for you in looking at this?
For me, it really was the impact of the test version. Seeing how those differences shrink with newer, presumably better designed and fairer tests, that's quite powerful.
Yeah.
It really makes you question how much of previously reported differences might have been artifacts of the measurement tools themselves.
And the consistency of that processing speed advantage for females is also striking, isn't it?
It really is. Across versions, across studies, it seems like a very robust finding.
So thinking about all this, it kind of pushes back against relying on broad gender stereotypes about intelligence, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It strongly suggests we should be focusing much more on individual cognitive profiles, strengths, and weaknesses, regardless of gender.
Yeah, in schooler development, knowing someone's specific processing speed or visual skills seems way more useful than just their overall IQ score or their gender.
Precisely. Understanding that individual landscape of abilities seems far more productive. This meta-analysis gives us a much more nuanced picture, moving beyond simplistic comparisons.
It definitely challenges some old assumptions and points towards complexity. Thanks so much for walking us through that dense but fascinating research.
My pleasure. It's important work.
And for you, the learner, we hope that gave you the clarity you were after. For a final thought, if the differences lie more in these specific abilities, like processing speed or spatial skills, how could education maybe adapt? How could we better nurture those specific skills in all kids, moving beyond assumptions based on gender? Something to mull over. Until our next deep dive.